I do also want to talk about another story because I was just about to say this name and I can imagine some of the response from people at home when I say Cherie Blair. But anyway, the Children's Prosperity Plan, this is a report and it's all about how do you remove British children from so-called relative poverty by 2030. The reason I'm mentioning Cherie Blair is because she's one of the people that's coming out and saying that actually when it comes to the two-child benefits cap, that should be abolished. Lots of other suggestions in there as well. Many people are getting in touch saying, Michelle, what are you talking about? Child benefit isn't limited or capped to two different children. I think we're kind of getting wires crossed because child's benefits, apparently there's no limits to how many children you can claim for. But this is about things like child tax credits, universal credit, and how many children those kind of benefits can be applied for. And that is the two. Where are you on this, Mark?
To be honest with you, I'd probably ideally like to live in a world where we got rid of child benefit altogether. I'm not quite sure why the government should be our parents. I mean, people might, notice they're getting it, but they're also paying it all back in taxes. It doesn't come from the fairy godmother. And I think it's reasonable to draw some sort of limit there if you're going to have child benefit at all. I'm not sure that it should be extended to 6, 8, 10, 12 children. It's a choice to have children. It's not an obligation. Children are expensive. It's worth saying that what you get in child benefit will only pay a tiny fraction of what it costs to bring up a kid. It only mitigates the costs. And I'm rather impressed, it's not often I say this, by the response from the Labour Party here. They're sort of being asked, why haven't they embraced this? And somebody from the Labour Party points out they keep saying they're going to make tough decisions. And so they're not going to spend more on this and they're not going to spend more on that. To stick to the two-child benefit cap is a tough decision. And what you can't have is a political party that says, well, we're going to make tough decisions in general, but we're not going to make any tough decision in particular. And so I think that, we spend more than enough on welfare. Also, I'd say on the relative poverty point, let's stop measuring relative poverty. I don't really believe in relative poverty.
So what do you want to measure? Absolute poverty?
Yeah, absolute poverty, or some line of absolute cash. But relative poverty is mad. If you can imagine a world in which half of Britain suddenly became billionaires and the other half were only millionaires, we would consider the millionaires were in poverty, because relative to the billionaires, they're poor. So that shouldn't be the measurement at all. It should be some sort of basic, do you have the necessary wherewithal to, put a roof over your head, 3 square meals a day, the necessities of life. What it's relative to is neither here nor there.
Hello?
Well, I don't agree that child rearing or the decision to have children should be an individualistic act in the way I might expect Mark as a great free marketeer to describe. I think that it should be something that the whole of society is invested in, and that's why I would support much greater spending on childcare, for example. I think the cap should be lifted on child benefit. To be honest, the birth rate at the moment is so abysmal, as everyone keeps telling us. I think any incentive for more kids being born from government is probably a welcome and a good thing. But what I really wanted to pick up on with this whole announcement from Cherie Blair, who just... I share the viewers and listeners, perhaps appalling,
I could
response
hear viewers wincing when I said that name. I could hear them.
Hearing Cherie on the radio this morning. Because the most irritating thing is the way in which child poverty in particular gets talked about is as if it is this sort of holy policy that everybody should get around. And actually, she said in the Today programme this morning, this isn't just about political parties, it's about NGOs, companies. Every do-gooder in the world can get together and with Bono and sing about child poverty. And it's completely misunderstanding what you need to actually lift a child out of dire situations, and that is to lift their family out of dire situations. You only do that if a family and parents have good jobs, stable working living conditions, and you can only do that if you have a commitment to boosting or even just growing a little bit the British economy,
well,
which is what the Labour Party, it's classic, is coming from Blair. The Labour Party has no interest in doing anything big with the economy, and we all assume now that they're going to be the next government. And you might be right to praise Starmer for holding strong on this, but I don't think it's like a test of his mettle ideologically. I think he's just a miserable penny pincher at this point.
Or a boring pragmatist. I mean, the other thing, but we always seem to approach these sort of issues down the wrong end of the telescope. It's always about welfare benefits. The biggest problem that a lot of young families or even putative young families face is the cost of housing. We've allowed, because of government intervention and our ridiculous planning laws, housing to become absolutely out of the reach of normal people, especially here in London, but right across the country. If we could actually have a serious reform of our planning laws, house prices would fall to something normal. It would be possible for young people on an average salary rather than on a high salary to get on the housing ladder, and that helps family formation. But always the likes of Cherie Blair seem to approach this on what can the welfare state do, what can the distribution of money be, rather than those more imaginative reforms which would make a much bigger difference, I think.
But why do we have to have one or the other? I think that I'm 100% with you on the housing point. Absolutely, we should rip up planning law and change it and actually do something big in relation to that. But if you're going to, what we need to, now I'm going to have my Liz Truss moment here, if what we need to, she was right, we need growth for the economy, and what we need to do is some quite drastic things. We need to cut all of the kind of zombie economy of businesses that aren't doing anything and the waste, and we need to have big projects that will, and retrain people, reskill people. All of that needs a healthy, functioning welfare state in order to provide the safety net for people to reskill, to quit their job or get let out or get let go by their job and start a new one. You need to have a quite robust, I think, a doubled, a tripled welfare system, which would actually provide for people. At the moment, we've got sort of a bit of everything and nothing.
Hang on, you said double or triple. I mean, the total welfare bill in Britain is now £320 billion a year. What's that? About, I'm doing the maths in my head, £14,000 per household per year, just on welfare spending. This is neither healthy nor robust. It's unbelievably expensive. But if for £320 billion a year, we still haven't obliterated poverty, apparently, in Britain, the idea that dialing up this system by another 10 or 20 billion is suddenly going to crack it, to my mind, is wishful thinking.
No, certainly not just throwing... I'm not suggesting we just throw money, and I'm saying we have this is really wishful thinking here, but I think if you had a economic plan from a government which had, in the process of getting people retrained and reskilled with jobs on the horizon of big infrastructure projects or whatever you want to do.
Should be able to do this for 320 billion, right?
But at the moment you have, I can tell you that living on welfare is, as you know, is no picnic, and it's not that we have people sort of living the life of Riley on universal credit or job seekers allowance, as it used to be called. But a government should be invested in getting people into work because it's much better for you socially, financially and all the rest of it. But you can't cut welfare when you are expecting people to take great risks in a new push for a growing economy. So I think the two have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, successive governments seem to have been damn good at getting people onto welfare and pretty poor at getting people off welfare. I think it's pretty preposterous, the total number of people who have some welfare claim or another now. When the welfare state was, invented, came in, the Beveridge report at the time, going back to the 1940s, the idea was the welfare state was there to provide subsistence levels of support for a limited period of time. This has got preposterously out of control now. We're not targeting the welfare state on, let's say, I don't know, the bottom 5 or 10%, maybe 15% of the population, pick your number. It's now spread so widely, creates such bad, perverse incentive effects in the economy. And although it's a relatively small number, we have far too many people who are now on their third generation of being permanent welfare claimants. No government of either stripe has really managed to get people off welfare and into work. Unemployment might be down, but then the number of people who are apparently too sick to work has zoomed through the roof. So somewhere this system isn't working in the way that we'd like it, and it is easily the most expensive budget item on the government's payroll.
What do you make to it at home? On the website there, Nigel says, scrap this kind of stuff. If you can't afford to bring up your own kids, do not have them. He says it's simple. Do not expect me to pay for them through my taxes. But Lee says it is a choice to have children, but way back when the world was different and people had jobs which paid enough to look after a family. Now some of these jobs barely cover a single person. He puts that at the door of the government. He says it's their fault, sinking our economy over the last decade. What do you make to all of that?